Yeah, the consequences for cheating in high school are already so minimal. Like there's so many stories I hear of like people literally cheating in front of teachers. Like they pull out their phone in the middle of a test, and teacher just like, "Hey, please put away your phone," and then they go back to doing whatever teachers do whilst the class is writing a test. So um, there is a lot of, I think, differences just between the way that high school treats academic integrity and university. And that's definitely bleeding through in how online examinations and online assessments are taking
Yeah,
place.
definitely. So we can see a lot of changes have occurred in online learning, and overall, the situation has completely changed. So, given this, what do you think has helped you really cope and adapt to this situation?
So I guess I'll just start off. I think what really helped me the most sort of cope with it is just having some sort of structure to my day and creating a sort of routine for myself. So I always try to like wake up and go to sleep at specific times. I set hours during my day to eat, set hours for productive work, for like physical activity and exercise, and then just like some hours at the end of the day for just relaxation and social time with friends. So just maintaining that structure that we normally wouldn't have with in-person classes and in-person work and other volunteering roles we might have, just that really helped me sort of stay on track with my school. Something that also kind of helped me out was, and I think we should be doing more of, is just reaching out to some old friends that you haven't talked to in a while. I actually reached out to some friends that I haven't spoken to since high school just to see how they were doing, and we caught up a little bit. And I think it was really good just to maintain that connection with other people during this time of like continuous separation, and that's important for mental health and maintaining our wellness overall. Um, I guess something I always also do is I've been exercising a lot more with this extra free time. I try to go out for jogs every day. I do some body weight exercises like push-ups, crunches, um, and yeah, that's good for like immunity in this sort of COVID situation, maintaining your physical health, making sure you're eating well. But it's also been helping me out just staying sane. And every time I exercise, I always feel a lot better during the day.
Yeah. I mean, I agree on most of those points. Like those, I still need to figure out a schedule that I can put myself to and commit to. But yeah, catching up with old friends. Yeah, I've tried catching up to some people that I haven't spoken to since elementary school, and that was interesting to say the least. But it's yeah, that I've put a lot of time into sort of hobbies and things that I didn't think I would have the time for, that I had kind of given up on. Interests that like I hadn't touched in a while, to try and kind of have some sense of doing things that I would be doing if I had this much free time. Um, yeah, exercise. I mean, I was never really one to exercise before, so even some exercise is more than no exercise. Yeah,
Yeah, going back to like trying new things, I think that's a really important thing and really great thing that you're doing because um, if you think about it, this is a time of challenge and like restrictions are being put on us. But if you sort of change your mindset into more of a growth mindset and think about ways that you could sort of benefit from this opportunity and ways you can sort of grow from it, I think that's a really great way to just incite some change in your life. Like me, I've been doing a lot more cooking than I would have, and I'm sort of experimenting with some new foods and trying other sort of like physical exercises that I haven't done before, just because I can and I have the time. And just I think it's a great way to find ways to improve yourself. I don't think we all have to look at it as something so
yeah,
negative
yeah.
all
That's
the time.
definitely true. Um, Finding all these different things that you can try doing, because like I feel like now is the best time to like pick up a hobby, because even if you don't continue it later, like at least now you know,
Exactly.
oh hey, maybe I like this thing or maybe I don't, and there's no consequences right now to spend wasting a bunch of time on something that you might not end up doing.
Yeah, those are really definitely really good tips, and I think I felt the same thing for me as well, especially like changing your mindset. Like Adam said, I think is really important, and like being able to look at this as an opportunity is a real skill.
Yeah, so during this pandemic, a lot of different challenges have been thrown at us. But what have we learned from this situation? As in, what are some life lessons you'd like to carry forward after this pandemic?
I think something really important, like I've spent a lot of time pouring myself into trying to understand the research as it comes out, reading preprints and stuff like that. But something that's just really kind of been hammered home as a point in the past few days and weeks is that like how important it is to be aware of what's happening in the world and having to do your own research and look at what kind of biases exist in sources of news and sources like media, and being able to kind of weed through all those different opinions to make your own worldview on like your own personal idea of what's happening and not just kind of adopting what some pundit says or another, and forming your own beliefs and having your own values instead of just like going on Twitter and being like, "Oh boy, what's happening now? The world is ending."
Yeah, and especially like now, there's a lot of like misinformation out there with the media. Even I've read stories about like well-known celebrity doctors sort of saying false information about COVID and just saying ridiculous things. I can't remember, one doctor suggested, I don't remember what he, some like ridiculous treatment for
There's been all sorts of crazy,
yeah.
ridiculous stuff. Yeah, it's really just made you realize how important it is to like be kind of scientifically literate and have that understanding of the world.
Yeah, and I think even beyond the crazy news, the crazy treatments, I think what really surprised me during this pandemic was how even reliable organizations like the World Health Organization, the information they get is rapidly changing, and like our understanding of the situation has also been, it hasn't been the same every day, and I think just coping with that and like what James said, like being able to critically look at that information regardless of what the source is definitely something important for the pandemic. Yeah, and going back to something both of you had mentioned was that you mentioned that like having a growth mindset is important and that this pandemic could in fact be an opportunity to acquire some hobbies or learn something new. So with regards to that, do you guys have any unique experiences or stories that you've experienced that you would like to share?
I could share like a kind of more personal point on the misinformation stuff. So I guess everyone knows by this
Mhm.
point that in the US, there have been politicians peddling hydroxychloroquine as a possible coronavirus treatment. Hydroxychloroquine is a drug that's used right now for lupus patients, and it's really important as part of their treatment to make sure that they don't have serious kind of problems with their disease. And I have family members who like have lupus. They are prescribed hydroxychloroquine, and the fact that you can open the news and see like, oh, worldwide hydroxychloroquine shortage because companies are buying it or countries are buying it up, and other countries are refusing to trade it because they think it's a magic drug that'll cure coronavirus with no proof whatsoever. Um, it makes me really worry about like the state of the world and how you can have these really important drugs for some people, and then some politician can just say some complete nonsense with no scientific evidence, and that will cause a shortage that it's probably going to cause a lot of suffering in terms of patients that aren't going to be able to get the drugs that they need because someone else has bought it up and stockpiled it thinking that it's a magic corona
Yeah,
cure.
you know what? I feel like this time, as much as ever, you can really see like the sort of conflict between science and politics. On the one hand, you have these politicians pushing this drug because it sort of helps them in their own interests, and then you've got the science that doesn't really back it up. So it really speaks to the importance of having sort of strong, peer-reviewed scientific studies that will help us learn more about the world rather than just taking the word of mouth of someone who might say something just because it's in their own interest.
And the consequences of it like is definitely huge because for the people stuck behind this are actual people and their lives are definitely being affected as we speak. And as James mentioned, um, not just with this treatment, but every piece of misinformation out there does affect someone in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so I guess before we conclude, we have a new and exciting segment called COVID-19 True or False, and it's going to be a game show like activity. So Victoria will read out a couple of statements, and you'll have to tell me whether or not you think the statement is true or false.
All right. So, first statement. The loss of smell can be a possible symptom of the novel coronavirus.
True.
I'm gonna say false. Just
That is correct.
never mind.
Sorry.
It's true, right?
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
true.
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I thought I read about that.
Yes.
yeah. It makes sense.
And I thought I read somewhere that oh, I don't want to say this, but because I'm not 100% sure, but I thought I read that those who have like the loss of smell and taste as like their early symptoms actually have like more likely to have better outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. I saw something. Yeah, I think I saw that headline too, but I didn't look into it. So yeah, but it sounds vaguely familiar.
But as we talked about today, whatever you hear, even whatever you hear in this podcast, do look at it with a scientific
Maybe
lens.
Verify it all yourself.
do your research. Make sure you read the article. Don't just read the headline like I did.
Exactly.
All right. So, second statement. A net 15.8 million subscribers signed up for Netflix, more than double the 7 million the company had told investors to expect prior to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wait, over what period of time?
So can you repeat the whole thing? I didn't
yeah.
really hear
So
it too
a
well.
net 15.8 million new subscribers signed up for Netflix, which is more than double the 7 million the company had told investors to expect prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I guess the time frame for that would be approximately when we all started going into quarantine, about mid-March.
Honestly, that sounds a little bit high, but I also know
Yeah.
that Nintendo Switch sales were more during the weekend that Animal Crossing released than the weekend that the Switch was released. So I'm gonna say true.
I'm gonna go with false just to
Okay.
see. I feel like double is.
So it does seem a bit high, double. However, this statement is true. So it seems like a lot of people are signing up for Netflix just as something to do during this pandemic.
I'm honestly kind of surprised because there's so many other streaming services now. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to pay for Netflix and 8 other
That is
things.
a good point. However, I guess this is something, or at least a new subscription that a lot of people have found use of during this time. All right, so the third statement, COVID-19 belongs to the same family as SARS and MERS.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
So
Yeah.
that
True.
is correct. The statement is true. COVID-19 is like a branching off virus from those two parental ones, I guess. All right, and the final statement is COVID-19 can live on surfaces for up to 24 hours.
isn't it longer? I saw something somewhere. It might have been a preprint, so maybe it's not super accurate. But it was like that it lived on cardboard for like multiple days.
Yeah, I haven't read too much about it. I remember they update this all the time, so I'm not too sure what the most recent research has shown, but I'm gonna go with
It's at least a day, so
yeah.
I guess does true encompass at least a day?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay, let's go with
Okay,
true then.
well, in the way you said it, yeah, it's true. COVID-19 can live on surfaces for 24 hours and a lot more. It just really depends on which surface we're talking about. So do your research and be careful with what you're coming into contact with.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Unmasking COVID. And a big thanks to Adam and James for being guests on this episode. Hope to see you next week.